Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am starting a Febregency vlog. So as you probably know, I was invited to be a co-host for Febregency this year, which is super exciting. I'm really happy about that. Really looking forward to reading some Regency era books and chatting about them with you, both on my Discord and on live shows, and probably in the comments of this video also. We don't have any prompts for Febregency this year. It's just to read a book that was written in the Regency era time period, and I have several books on deck. I've started 2 of the 3 so far. So I have Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott, and The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. So Sense and Sensibility is, first of all, a reread for me. I have read it at least 3 times previously, and when I was in high school, this was my favorite Jane Austen book. I reread it as an adult a couple of years later, and it dropped significantly in my estimation and ranking of Jane Austen's works, although I still love it. It still was like a solid 4-star book at the time. Really enjoyed my time with it. I actually am over halfway through this book at the starting of this vlog because I actually started it in January. The reason that I chose this book for Febregency, actually I didn't choose it for Febregency technically, it just kind of lined up that way. I'm teaching this book to my British literature class in the month of February. So I started it earlier so I could get a jump on it before we had our first class session on it. So I'm really enjoying it this time around because I'm really like researching it and looking into a lot of like the customs and things of the time, as well as a lot of the humor. So that way there are conversation points that I can bring up with my class. And so as a result of diving more deeply into it, I think I'm enjoying it even more. I've been alternating reading it physically and then also listening to it on audio. If you haven't read this Jane Austen before, it focuses very much on 2 sisters who their family has fallen on hard times and they're required to kind of change their lifestyles and all that kind of stuff due to the inheritance laws of the time. And so we have 2 sisters. We have Eleanor, who is the oldest, and she is a very sensible young lady, as in displaying a lot of tact and common sense and behaving in a way that would be considered appropriate for the time period. And then her younger sister, Marianne, who is filled with sensibility, meaning that she is just like overcome by her senses and emotions and not afraid to express those very vividly and outwardly in a time period where it was considered much more well-bred to be as unemotional as possible in public. So we're really comparing and contrasting these 2 sisters and their feelings. They do have a younger sister as well, but she's like 12 or 13, so she doesn't get a whole lot of page time. And some love interests of the ladies that come into play, along with lots of drama, lots of humor, a few characters that you love to hate, and a few characters that are acting in a time period that is very ridiculous for them to behave as vulgarly or gossipy as they are in a time period where that was not how you behaved. And so it makes the reading just really fun. So really enjoying my reread of this so far. The other book that I have started is The Italian by Anne Radcliffe, which I am buddy reading with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads and Dia from Novel Idea. This is our second Febregency that we are buddy reading something together, so it's really fun. I'm not very far into this. As you can see, I have 2 placeholders because I want to be able to flip to the notes in the back. So I am 3 chapters in and 47 pages, so not long at all. So I can just kind of tell you a little bit about what it's about so far. We're following a young man whose name is Vivaldi, which is really funny to me because it reminds me of the composer. So obviously it was in conjunction with that somehow. I need to do a little research and see if like Vivaldi's character was anything like this or if his name is just like that because of the sweeping romanticism of Vivaldi's music. But anyways, so Vivaldi, he sees this young lady who has a veil on, and then the wind blows part of the veil off and he's like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. So he does what any rational young man would do, and he follows her home and stalks her and starts watching her through the window. And then she sings a really beautiful song that pierces his heart, and he's a goner. So it's just so funny to me. I'm like, wow, this was like so romantic in the day, and nowadays we're like, that's called stalking, sir. Anyways, the young lady has reciprocal feelings towards him. Her name is Elena, but Vivaldi's from a really wealthy family and they want him to marry well. And he wants to marry Elena, and his family's like, absolutely not. She's poor. She doesn't come from a good background. No. So that's kind of where we are in the story. And he's plotting away because she is an orphan living with her aunt, taking care of her aunt. And the aunt approves of the match. So they're trying to find a way to make this work, but there's some nefarious doings. The aunt has passed away, which I don't think is spoiler because it's already happening in like chapter 3. She's died. There's a suspicion that she's been poisoned, and there's also kind of like this really creepy monk who every time that Vivaldi shows up at Elena's house, he's like, you shouldn't go there. Bad things will happen to you if you go there, in like a really creepy way. And then he like disappears and they're like, where did he go? We don't know. Like, he was just there and now he's not. It's like really bizarre. And Vivaldi thinks he recognizes this monk. He thinks it's like someone that his mother has been in contact with, like, and confesses to. So there's some drama that's developing. I'm pretty sure something really bad is gonna happen to poor Elena. I think she gets kidnapped. I think that's what happens, and then he's gotta go rescue her. Like, I'm pretty sure that's kind of the premise of where we're going with this. To be honest, I am not really enjoying this so far. When I read Mysteries of Ivanhoe a couple years ago, it was one of my favorite books of the year, and this book's just like not doing it for me yet. But Dia's farther ahead in it than I am, and she's finished volume 1, and she said that starts really picking up towards the end of volume 1, and that the villain is like wonderfully villainous, like mustache twirling villainous, and that the plot picks up and it's like really interesting. And once that happens, she was invested, but before that it was just kind of like, could take it or leave it. That's where I am right now, could take it or leave it. So I have hopes that it's really going to pick up. I've not yet started Ivanhoe. The plan is to start it soon, but I really want to finish Sense and Sensibility. That's like my goal. I would like to finish that sooner rather than later, because then I can work ahead and complete the notes that I need to complete for my class lectures and discussion questions and projects, essay prompts, all the things. So my goal is to like really focus on getting Sense and Sensibility done first, and then kind of like the overall plan for the Italian is to read 1 volume per week, and then the last week is just kind of like a catch-up week. So once I finish Sense and Sensibility, my plan is to like then start more into Ivanhoe and then just steadily continue apace with the Italian. But I will come back and update you soon. Time for a little Febregency vlog update. So I have finished Sense and Sensibility and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that are so nuanced in Sense and Sensibility, and I really do love the comparison of Eleanor and Marianne and kind of like the validity of how both of the sisters feel and behave, even though one's considered much more socially acceptable or well-bred than the other one. But I think that all of us have been Eleanor at some point in our life, and all of us have been Marianne at some point in our life. Like, we all have experienced the whole range of emotions, or, you know, being more stoic and quiet about our feelings. And I love the growth that we see in both of the girls, you know, and Eleanor learning she doesn't have to shoulder everything alone, and she shouldn't have to, and that it can be damaging to like never show anyone how you're really feeling. And then Marianne just letting all her feelings out to be trampled on by whoever, whenever. That too, like they both grow so much, and there's a healthy range of emotion to be found like somewhere between them. There are a lot of things I love about Sense and Sensibility, and there are some things I don't love that I don't think I can really talk about without being spoilery, but there's a few ways that plot lines resolve that I find to be less than satisfying, maybe partly because I'm just a little bit more vindictive than Jane Austen is in terms of several characters not getting the comeuppance that I feel like they deserve. Like, I feel like they get off so easy compared to like what they ended up doing. And while Sense and Sensibility actually has one of my favorite love interests, I wish that there had been like a little bit more page time for the relationship between the two of them to develop, because we just see his care for someone and the way that he cares about them and loves them and is like steady and faithful to them. And then just kind of a few sentences towards the end kind of talking about how she sees him for what he's really like and cares about him and stuff. And I just wish there had been more like page time of them interacting after all the big dramatic events of the book had gone down, but that's okay. So there's some things that I don't particularly like love the most. I don't think that it's as satisfying as some other Austens that I've read, but I do really love like the sister relationship. And even though there is like focus on, you know, the societal conventions of the time and the satire and the humor and the hypocrisy and things that Austen's trying to point out, and even though there are romances, I feel like at its core, so much of Sense and Sensibility is about the love that these two sisters have for each other and the care that they have for each other. And I really, really love that. I'm also reading the Italian, and I'm finally now into volume 2. There's 3 volumes. I think I'm like 2 chapters into volume 2. I can't remember. I don't have it with me, which is a mistake. I don't know why I didn't bring in any of the books that I intended to talk about, but that's okay. Anyways, so the Italian, I was really struggling with it at first. It wasn't very interesting to me. And it wasn't until we got closer to the end of volume 1 that it actually started to get interesting to me, because the main thing that I knew about the plot, which I'm pretty sure I said in the introduction to this video, so I don't think it's spoilery to tell you, but like someone gets kidnapped, like that doesn't happen for a little bit. And once that happens, it really starts to pick up. I mean, it's not like it's like even a quarter of the way through the book when it happens. So it's not like it's that far into the book. But the first few chapters, I was just like not very invested and feeling a little bit bored. Vivaldi as a character, I just like, I find him so over the top, which is very like indicative of the time period that it's written. But I really like Elena. Elena is our female lead. I feel like she is like a really strong female for a Regency era book, in that she's very much self-sufficient. And even though she loves Vivaldi too and falls in love with him very quickly, she doesn't allow anything to materialize because she knows that his family doesn't approve of her at all. And she has more pride and self-respect than just to be completely like denigrated by his family. And that is something that I really like about her. But even so, there's another moment where they're in a moment of danger, and I won't say what's happening because I don't want to spoil that, but they're in a moment of danger and Vivaldi's like, we should get married. And she's like, can we talk about this later? Like, can we focus on actually getting to safety and then maybe we can discuss getting married then? Like, this does not feel like the right time. Anyways, I really like her. Our villain is like so conniving and like hateable, and I really, really like him. He's a monk, I think, or like a confessor or a priest or something like that. And yeah, I really, really like him. And then Vivaldi has like a right-hand man. I almost want to say a henchman, but that's not the right word. He's like a right-hand man. She's helping him out and going places with him and is in with him for all these adventures. And he is like, I love him. His name is Paolo, and he is like some really good comic relief at times, but also there are times when Vivaldi's like, oh no, like what is going to happen here? And Paolo's like, it's gonna be fine. Like, it kind of reminds me of the dynamic between Don Quixote and Sancho, where Don Quixote is like over the top and Sancho kind of like tries to talk him out of it, but then he can't. And so then he's like, well, I guess I'm along for the ride then. I feel like that's how Paolo is. And when I was talking to Dia and Stephanie about this, Dia actually compared Vivaldi to Fazzini from The Princess Bride, who's like inconceivable because like everything that happens feels like it shocks him to his core. Like everything is inconceivable. And then I was like, yeah, I feel like then Paolo's like, you keep using that word, and I don't think you know what it means. Anyways, I'm having a really fun time with it now, but it took a little while for it to actually get going for me. Once it did, I'm really enjoying it. So that's kind of where I am with that. I haven't started Ivanhoe yet. I hope to start it within the next couple of days, but I will come back on here and update you again soon. Hi there, it's time for a little update as I have finished something and I'm ready to start something else. So I have finished The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. This book was a really fun ride. I just really ended up enjoying it, and it took me a while to get into it, which I mentioned in my last update, but I'm just really glad that I stuck with it, because it's one of those situations where it's sometimes you're like, oh, is this book going to be a book for me? And it really ended up being one that I enjoyed. I was feeling a little slumpy when I read it, so I think that it's one of those ones that maybe if I read it at a different time, it would have been like a 5-star read, but it absolutely wasn't. It was more like a 3.5, 4-star. It was really fun because not only is the dramaing in this book, but we have twist after twist after twist that I did not see coming. Dia saw one of them coming, but there was one big twist that none of us saw coming, and we were all like, wait, what? So it was just really, really fun to see the dynamics between the characters. And we just have some really villainous villains that are really easy to hate, but some of them it seems like, oh, are their hearts softening a little bit? So there is a little bit of humanizing them at times, which is another thing that I appreciated. So I felt like it was just such a really good book. I think that it's more tightly paced and plotted than The Mysteries of Udolpho, but I still didn't like it quite as much as The Mysteries of Udolpho. I didn't find myself as drawn in by the beautiful writing, and part of that could have been that I was feeling slumpy, but part of it is just I love the traveling that happens in The Mysteries of Udolpho. So you have just really beautiful descriptions of the French and Italian countryside, and you get a little bit of that here. There are moments that are really beautifully written, but overall I didn't find that aspect to be as enjoyable or draw me in the same way that it did with The Mysteries of Udolpho. But that, again, partly could have been because I was slumpy, but it also was because I was more interested in the plot and where we were going with this. Plus, I did really like the characters in this book, which I remember really, really loving Emily from Mysteries of Udolpho. And I really liked Elena in this book. I think that Anne Radcliffe, so far, I've only read 2 of her books, so far I feel like she writes really good female protagonists that feel strong for the Regency era. These are not just girls who just faint over everything. I mean, there is fainting that does happen because that's just part of the Regency era and the Victorian era. I don't know if it's just, the lack of nutrition, or, it was seemingly more well-bred to faint when someone said something vulgar or something scary happens. So I don't know if it was the societal expectations as well, but these aren't girls that just are waiting for a man to come rescue them. I mean, I felt like Elena had a strong personality, and she wasn't ready to just leap right into marriage and right into romance. She questions things, and that's something I appreciate about her. And I think I already mentioned, but I love the relationship between Vivaldi and his sidekick / servant Paolo. But Paolo is just so warm-hearted and just over the top with his kindness and his devotion. So it was a really fun read. I really enjoyed it. It was a perfect read for Febregency. Then I did start Ivanhoe, which I actually started this on Febregency Sprints, but we kind of had some things happen. We've had some flooding where we live, and so our church basement was massively flooded. And so I've been listening to this on audio, and in one day I got through half of the audiobook, which is crazy. It was I don't know, I think I got almost 20 chapters in one day or something. I'm honestly not really enjoying this that much, which I'm surprised by, and maybe it's because I'm kind of slumpy and also have had a really stressful week. That probably has something to do with it. but I'm just not really like very invested in what's happening. Like it's very Robin Hood, which some like people told me that it was very Robin Hood-esque in its time period because we've got jousting, we've got like contests, we've got King Richard who's been off on the Crusades and now he's like locked up somewhere. We've got Prince John trying to take over, and so it's very much in that time period and in that vein. And so, yeah, so there's some characters that I find to be kind of interesting and intriguing, but I think that this is just like not my favorite setting, because when I was reading the Italian, you know, that takes place during the Regency era, and this does not. It was written in the Regency era, but takes place, you know, many years prior. And so, yeah, so I don't know. It's just not really been my favorite. I'm going to continue on with it, and I'll let you know what I think, but it's feeling pretty forgettable for me, even though it probably was kind of like be more revolutionary for its time because maybe there hadn't been as many Robin Hood stories written at the time. But I don't know. I feel like I've read better Robin Hood-esque stories. So I don't know. It's okay, but I would be interested in reading more Sir Walter Scott that is not set in this time period, because I think that his writing is decent. I just I'm not overly invested. Anyway, that's that update. That's all I have to say. I am hopefully going to finish Ivanhoe before the month is out, and then I can come back and update you on my final thoughts on that and kind of wrap up Febregency. Wrap up this Febregency vlog on February 28th. You'll see it on March 1st, but I'm recording this clip on the last day of February to let you know where I landed. So Ivanhoe, I ended up DNFing Ivanhoe. I think I was probably like 52 to 55% range through it when I decided to DNF it, because honestly, like I didn't care at all. Like I just did not want to be physically reading it or listening to it, and I just decided that this would be better saved to maybe read another time. But it just really was not working for me for various reasons, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I've been very slumpy during the month of February, which I've said multiple times throughout this vlog, and that has continued. And so reading Ivanhoe felt like pulling teeth, like forcing myself to read it when I absolutely didn't want to. So I don't want to feel that way about a book, even if it was a book for a read along, even though it was like my classic for the year for my classics TBR. I don't want to feel that way. So maybe I will give Ivanhoe another chance at another time and it will land better for me. I feel like it's one of those books where if you're already feeling slumpy, maybe it's not the way to go. It wasn't the last thing that I ended up reading for Febregency though. I actually picked up some romantic poetry, which was something I had as an option on my TBR, though I didn't mention it at the beginning of this video. I have some romantic poets that I have read a lot more of than others. Like last year, I really spent a lot of time with Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, and I've read like a lot of Wordsworth, and I've read a lot of Blake as well. And so there's a lot of romantic poetry that I've spent a lot of time with, but I realized I hadn't really read very much Coleridge. So I decided that he was going to be my Febregency poetry buddy. So I ended up I read some of it physically, which was just wonderful. But with his longer poetry, I decided I was going to listen to it because I have a harder time following long poems unless I'm either listening to them or reading them out loud myself, because I feel like I miss a lot of beauty of the rhyming schemes and the language. So I listened to The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and wow, it was so good. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I felt like it was just really beautifully written, but also like quite haunting and even creepy at times in terms of kind of this warning to be kind to nature and living things. And it kind of reminds me of some of Emily Dickinson's poems with like the harm no living thing. Was that Emily Dickinson? It might have been Christina Rossetti, and now I don't remember. But it reminds me of that. And I just really, really just enjoyed it thoroughly. I thought that it was at times like interesting and then at times haunting, like I said, creepy at times. It just like ran the whole gamut, and it was very, very enjoyable to listen to. Highly recommend you listening to it rather than like physically reading it, or like listen to it while you're looking at it on the page, because I feel like poetry is meant to be enjoyed audibly. The same audiobook I listened to also had Kubla Khan, which I liked but didn't enjoy as much as Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And then, like I said, I read a bunch of his short poetry as well. So that was a really nice conclusion to Febregency. So overall, I feel like my Febregency ended quite well. I really enjoyed my reread of Sense and Sensibility. I had a really fun time with the Italian. Ivanhoe was kind of the thing that like brought it down for me. So I just let go of that and dropped it like a hot potato. And then ending with Coleridge was a really good decision. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below if you've read any of the things that I've read here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you read Ivanhoe and you enjoyed it, do you have any tips or things that helped you? Or maybe it just clicked better with you. I don't know. I do want to try it again at some point. And I'd love to hear what you read for Febregency as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.